things are dictated by law. When you look at the Section 13 of the Public Officers Ethics Act, I mean, it outlaws any state or public officer from using their office to solicit for either harambees or to contribute, all those things. But people just don't read for the sake of, their own reasons. So on the recommendations by the Office of the Ombudsman, one, they said that any appointed public officer should refrain from participating in the activities of political parties or candidates or use the public resources for such activities. The second recommendation that the Ombudsman made was that any appointed public officer who wish to participate in politics or support any political party or candidate should resign from their positions immediately. And I think that is the crux of the recommendation that ought to have been followed. But as was once, synonymous with the former majority leader of the National Assembly, that they would rather die than resign. So I think resignation with our public officers aren't synonymous with exactly what they practice. And then moving away from that, the government itself issued a circular, on 22nd of December 2011. And this was about this circular was circulated or disseminated to the PSs, who are the accounting officers in every ministry. It was circulated to the Auditor General. It was circulated to the Clerk of the National Assembly, the Chief Registrar of the High Court, the Secretary of the Public Service Commission, the Director General of the National Security Intelligence Service, and the Secretary Teachers Service Commission, right? And it just dealt with the political neutrality and integrity of state and public, offices. But this circular as well hasn't been fully implemented. Yeah, that is all from me. Back to you, Manuel.
Thank you, PLO, for those submissions. Perhaps if we can take another round. Josephine, are you there? You have the microphone.
Simple question. Hello, Manwa.
Yes.
Very simple question, so I can even drop off as a speaker. Could the society provide us a format for memoranda, making it easy, so that, for example, if I have a format for memoranda, I can then fill it out myself and forward on to the National Assembly? That's number one. Just some guidance on memoranda, so that our memoranda are very professional and very well done. I've done this before, but it's not what we do every day. So that would give it, some good credibility. Number two, police killings have been a nightmare since this revolution began. Police killings have been a nightmare. And Kindiki was on a national televised media house where he was asked a direct question. And I'm asking the society here because it's full of lawyers. Kindiki was asked, when Parliament was overrun by citizens, who are the people who were carrying high caliber weapons, AK-47s, M16s, etc., in civilian clothes and masked? And he was asked, who were those people? And Kindiki answered, I don't know who those people are. And I'm telling you, I'm the Minister of Interior, and I don't know anybody who was firing a revolver, a pistol, a high caliber weapon on Parliament grounds. Those are not my officers, and I don't know who they are, and they have to face the law. My question to the society is a man like that eligible to go back to the Interior docket as Cabinet Secretary? I mean, what are we saying? A sniper killed an unarmed Kenyan. Actually, many clothed in the flag and demonstrating peacefully. They were not armed. So how is he even eligible to go back as Cabinet Secretary Interior? That's just a humble and simple question, and we want answers. Thank you very much.
Thank you for those questions and submissions. Maundu, were you there?
Yes, I'm right here. So I have three questions. And the first one will be the recovery of lost funds through corruption, and the culprits are never prosecuted. I don't remember a moment when we had a minister or a CS who was prosecuted for embezzling the public funds. Also, the long-term accountability policy that we should put in the system. Since independence, we have seen revolutions come and go. Like the 1992, let's say it's our parents who fought for that democracy. But after the democracy, we don't see any policy that was put into place that could help so that we don't fall back into corruption or dictatorship. Also, the Auditor General always gives their recommendations after they audit the reports, which are never followed in the county governments, nor as the national government. Those are my questions, and also the public participation. How can it be considered and be implemented by the government? We had a senator, one of the senators saying that these recommendations by the public are never put into any consideration. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. June, kindly you have the microphone. Proceed.
Hi, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so I have two questions. My first one is to LSK as a body. I want to ask whether or not it's possible for you to get together with Amnesty International and Kenya Human Rights Commission and file human rights violations and war crime charges at the ICC towards the police heads, the cabinet secretary that got fired and is somehow getting rehired, and every police head that was in any county where somebody died, just a joint level, like a joint suit, like war crime charges, also including like police officers going to hospitals, because hospitals are protected under the Geneva Convention. So that was also like gross violation of human rights. So is it possible for LSK and the rest of the human rights bodies to come up with and just sue them? Like, because the police have been acting the way they've been acting because there have been no consequences for what they've been doing. Like, they literally are just killing people with no consequences. And I don't think anybody even trusts the Kenyan court to even hold them. And even any citizen who was like kidnapped or anything, you can't even like trust that you will be safe as like a witness, because you will be going and facing someone who can come into your home and break in and then just like kidnap you. So is it possible for you to take it up and go above and just go to ICC directly and file war crime charges and crimes against humanity against all these individuals, including all the officers who are also found and named on like the X timelines? Because like Rex's killer as well has already been identified. So is it possible for that to happen? My second point is towards like the cabinet secretaries. I think the problem began when we allowed that individual to go and consult himself and pick from his basket of sycophants. So maybe the movement, the citizens' movement, should front their own cabinet, because he obviously cannot be trusted to bring individuals who are qualified. So maybe the citizens themselves should form their own cabinet and front it and tell him, pick here, because it clearly looks like you're not able to. Thank you.
Thank you very much, June. We can take one more, then perhaps we can have responses from the advocates on the forum. Brian Casey. Brian Casey, you have the microphone, kindly. If Brian is not there, we have Simon. Simon? Okay. President, are you there? perhaps we can take up responses even as we wait for the other questions. And I think before you pick it up, and June has raised substantive questions in terms of instituting a case before the ICC. I think I will leave that to you for purpose of response. A question was asked by Josephine about whether we can, as the Law Society, present a format for the memorandum. If you haven't noticed, all the communications and the memoranda that the Law Society presents to the National Assembly are often shared in our forums and shared to the members of the public. But again, that is a challenge you've given us. We have a committee that is specialized to deal with the memoranda to the National Assembly, and we will be able to perhaps share those forums for purposes of any individual who wants to present their grievances on the cabinet secretary appointees when the vetting starts in Parliament, can be able to actually present their views through that process. But I want to also highlight that there is no specific form. If you have information, the Constitution has shied away from procedural technicalities. It's the substance of what you write. You can write it on a paper, you can write it on an email, you can communicate whichever way. And I think that is the simplest way to address that question. There is no mode of presentation that is unacceptable. As long as that mode of presentation has been facilitated, then it's acceptable by Parliament, and they have no reason whatsoever under the law to reject a proposal that has been presented by a member of the public. And I think we have spoken over and over again on the process of public participation and how important your views are, considering that largely the individuals we elected to represent us in Parliament have abdicated on their duty to perhaps even go to their constituents and ask them, what do you need which position are you taking on these cabinet secretaries? What do you need me to address in Parliament? Which side do you want me to vote? Because that mandate, which is donated by the members of the public, seems to be misused by the members of the members of Parliament and donated to, party affiliations. And I think that is the genesis of the big problem we have in Kenya, because we have a National Assembly which has huge powers under the Constitution, but we have individuals in those offices who do not actually know how to exercise those powers they have been given. There is a question on whether there's a question that was asked on the recovery of lost funds. I think, Madam President, if you can address that together with June's question on whether there's a possibility of a coalition of suits with other civil societies before the International Criminal Court. If you're there, Madam President.
The issue on lost funds or recovery, well, investigations must be done, and those are hue and cry, and we have agencies that can carry out investigations to ascertain where monies were stolen and tracing to be done. We have the Assets Recovery Authority, and we can also raise those concerns to the Director of Public Prosecutions that he can direct investigations to be done so that the same may be handled and tabled before the citizens, and we see charges being laid. Because as much as you can try private prosecution, it's important that also these agencies that have the capacity and the resources to actually do proper investigations and tracing and get access through court orders to different accounts, they actually implement and carry out their work on that. I noticed Steve, there are quite also still a number of advocates. I didn't get the second question, Manwa.
The question was whether the Law Society can lodge a class case before the International Criminal Court alongside other civil society. I thought it's important that you address that question.
We've been working with
yourself.
the various civil society organizations. The question is the threshold, and that's why we are collecting information. We are collecting data as we analyze and what tangible information that can be presented, because it's normally the threshold to establish whether the criminal courts, the International Criminal Court of Justice can take up the matter. However, the other avenues that we can invite international organizations to come and also monitor and investigate, so that irrespective of the fact that we may not meet the threshold to the International Criminal Court, there are special rapporteurs who carry out, who, based on what's going on in a nation, can come in as well and investigate or monitor the situation so that things do not degenerate any further.
Thank you, Madam President. I think June also asked a question on the consequences. I think as the Law Society, we have done what we had to do, and we are requesting for the members of the public to channel information. If you know an individual is held in a particular police station, communicate that information to the Law Society. If you know someone has been held beyond that period that is constitutional, if you know that a police officer, a specific police officer who took away someone's life, who injured an individual, who committed those atrocities, it's very important that if you have documentation in form of even videos, photos, and identity, perhaps it's important that you actually channel that information to the Law Society. I indicated earlier that we have a toll number, and it's on the social pages of the Law Society of Kenya. The number is 0800720434. You can access the same on our pages, and then help us have that data for purposes of instituting proceedings. So far, we have cases in court, and nowadays I believe the responsibility has shifted from the office, because we know the individuals who hold these offices hide behind those offices to actually conduct atrocities and maim members of the public. And so some of the suits that we have filed in court we have specifically sued or mentioned as respondents the heads of those institutions, the heads of those police officers, the OCS, the IG himself, the acting IG, or any other person in those offices, for purposes of answering to the atrocities meted against the members of the public. We have habeas corpus. The number of cases we have filed on disappearances, on people who have disappeared, are now approaching 15. And in all those, of course, some of whom some individuals who have already been released, you will notice that the majority of the individuals who are arrested who are arrested and who are disappeared have already been released. But there are some people who have been found to have been murdered, and so the Law Society is still following up on those individual cases of murder. And I think so far, it's important that you channel the information. If you know a family or an individual who was shot, who was injured by the police, and you know that they did not commit any offense, in any case, the police have no right to shoot people demonstrating peacefully in the streets. Channel that information to the Law Society of Kenya. We can take another round of questions now that we have a majority, quite a number of advocates here. Wakili, Steve, welcome. We can have Simon, then Mark. Simon, kindly. Simon, are you there? Eddie?
Yeah, my question was, now that the president has reappointed 6 of the people that he dismissed previously, will they still undergo vetting? And then for somebody like Kindiki, who we all know ordered for the police brutality before, is it still culpable of being responsible for the innocent lives that we lost? And how will we go about it as citizens? And then there's an issue that has been tabled as a bill by the senator for Kiambu on turning all the money allocated for CDF bursary into capitation. Is it possible that citizens can call out for this thing so that the government can actually implement that thing and make education free using that CDF bursary allocation instead of it being put in the hands of MP, while at the same time the courts are declared CDF as unconstitutional? That was my question.
Thank you for that. Joyous, is it Joyous or Joy? Kindly, if you have the microphone. Eddie, Millicent. Nyakundi. Nyakundi, are you there? Mark? Can someone hear me?
I can hear you, Jim.
Okay. Mark? Mark? PLO, kindly, if you can pick up on some of the questions even as we add more speakers.
Hi, can you hear me? There's that last bit of that particular question that I'm trying to connect to what I have with me. So just to recap, the last bit, Manuel.
Yes, which question?
Should be the second last question, I believe.
I think the question was on the vetting process, and I think that had already been answered earlier. Perhaps if you can respond to the same, and then the question of Kindiki taking up the same appointment, and the question of the killings that happened under his watch.
Well, thank you. First things first, I mean, Professor Kithure Kindiki, as the media, has been highlighting the same as being an international lawyer. For me, I think one can't be an internationally recognized lawyer if one doesn't conform to the international standards on human rights protection and the best practices that actually do govern not just the right to protest, but equally the right to life, which is domesticated under our laws under Article 26. So he is first an advocate, actually, before he is a cabinet secretary. And prior to him being an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, he is a citizen, by birth. So it behooves me that, one, an advocate of the High Court, a member of the Law Society of Kenya, person who took an oath to protect, defend, and uphold the rule of law, will be the same person who will come and violate all these human rights without blinking. And for him, it's actually more or less like, doing that which his office, mandates him to do. But it is wrong. One, on the context of him actually not, speaking on the basis of, protection of human rights. Safeguarding the right to protest under Article 37. Equally, just trying to whip, the Inspector General of Police. The commandants, under him. But for him, it's about optics over accountability, and that's what is ailing our nation. Because ours, like I said, is just a moral issue. We have laws, we have good laws with us, but the people implementing those laws are the people who defile, the same laws, and having no issue to the same. Kindiki, just like the rest of the cabinet secretaries who are dismissed from office, should not even be vetted. Why? Because it is, they are already dismissed by virtue of, bringing shame and dishonor or disrepute to the office they held. And like I earlier mentioned on Article 75(3), that is enough for the president, not to keep on defiling the law, because what the president is doing is contempt. It is spitting, on fundamental, rights and freedom. The oath of office that he took when he was being sworn into office. So anyone who was dismissed from that particular list should not even feature, anywhere as a nominee. Let other new, fresh and blood people who were not part and parcel of a previous cabinet, to come and take the chances, because Kenya isn't short of, capable people. Leaders with ethics and integrity. I saw the tweet by the Homa Bay Town MP. I don't want to mention his name, because sometimes, equally, it's tragic, how people think. And when he says that, those were in the previous cabinet will never be vetted in this new cabinet. That's a wrong position. The only time that vetting will never take place if there is a reshuffle. But the moment you're dismissed from office, you have to undergo vetting. But there's a catch. If you're dismissed from office, you're not even supposed to form, part of that list of persons that, the National Assembly will be vetting. So I think there is a lot of misinformation, and some coming from people that we think could have held, others in power to be accountable of their actions, but that the same people, trying to dig, the whole far much deeper than we already have found ourselves in. So that's how I'll respond to that question. On the issue of the killings, yeah, it's tragic, and but not just Rex, Kenyeki, but even 50 plus, souls that we lost. I saw the other day the Daily Nation published, the headline with 50, souls that we've lost along the way, deaths that could have been, avoided. So I think accountability, not just for the IG who apparently resigned, but even, those still in office. So back to you, Manuel. So I'll be listening into more of the questions and respond later.
Thank you, PLO. Thomas, you have the microphone. Kindly proceed.
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity. I want to ask 3 questions. Number one, you realize that there are so many people who are getting arrested, and these people, these people are getting arrested. Some, they don't have access to lawyers. So suppose I have been arrested and taken to court, and in that case you find that I don't have money to pay a lawyer. 2, I don't have access to any lawyer. So what am I supposed to do in that scenario where I've been arrested because of demonstration, I've been taken to court, and don't have money to pay for a lawyer, Two, I don't have any access to a lawyer. So what am I supposed to do to proceed? Because you realize most of the citizens who are getting arrested, they don't have that capacity to access to lawyers. What are they supposed to do? Then question number two is about the Law Society. You need to explain to us that is it fair that every moment we have a public participation, it is only happening in Nairobi. It is only happening to those people who have access to technology. You are being told to send your memoranda through email. So, is there a way we can expand the public participation even to the chief's level, whereby a person in Lamu, a person in Wajir can be able to proceed to the chief's office, give the memoranda, and then the government takes over from there? Because when we limit the public participation only to be happening in Nairobi, on the TV, we see in the TV people in the boardroom participating in the public participation, and the environments of the big cities. So what is the space of that citizen in Busia? What is the space of a citizen in Turkana and in all those marginalized areas? So is there a way we can expand the public participation to be taking place through the government avenues, that is through the chiefs, so that we can get close to the people? Then question number three, the Law Society, please. I want to ask you to, on the issue of corruption, is there a way the Law Society can regulate its lawyers to the level that you limit your lawyers not to be taking cases of corruption, of people who have been accused of corruption, of like 1 million, 100 million plus, those big cases. So as we handle the issue of corruption, we have seen lawyers representing people who have been involved in capital crimes. So is there a way Law Society can regulate their lawyers so that we handle the issue of corruption by not representing those guys who have been involved in capital crimes? Because I know of a lawyer, I will not mention the name, who doesn't take a case of CK, that is canon knowledge. There are those lawyers, you present to them such a case, they will not take it. So if we have a lawyer who doesn't take those cases as a way of trying to bring good moral in the society, so is there a way LSK can also regulate its lawyers so that we limit the issue of corruption by not representing those big thieves in courts? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We'll take one more, then get the intervention of the president. Dr. Kamande. Dr. Kamande. Dr. Kamande, are you there? Okay, Laibon. Mr. Laibon. Ngede. Ngede, are you there? Big ticket. Kindly don't request the microphone if you do not have any contributions to make, so that we allow many contributors. Even as we wait for those other questions, I think some fundamental questions have been placed, especially on LSK by Thomas. I will start with your last question, and I'll allow the president to respond to some of the other questions. On the question of advocates representing corrupt people who are involved in corruption, it's not in the place of the Law Society to regulate its members as to which client you will pick as an individual and which client you will not pick. That is the responsibility of the advocate. They are advocates of the High Court of Kenya. They have the best judgment to choose who to represent and who not to represent. And secondly, there is something we call in law the cab rank rule. The cab rank rule requires that an advocate cannot refuse to represent someone. And again, I put this scenario. We have had people who have been involved in robbery violence shot by police officers. When they are arrested, they are taken to court. They have a right to be treated. And doctors do not refuse to treat people who have been injured while committing a crime. And so there's a reason why the law provides that an advocate cannot actually refuse to represent an individual, because under our constitution, every accused person has a right to be represented by an advocate of their choice. And the reason why the law envisions that is so that the advocate helps the court largely to ensure that an innocent person is not convicted of an offense. Remember, it's not the advocate who determines whether someone is guilty or not. The advocate's work is to represent that person and to ensure that the due process of the law is properly followed, to ensure that the crime so alleged to have been committed, the person so alleged to have committed the crime is subjected through a due process as the law provides, so that when a conviction is made, the rule of law is perceived to have been followed. You've asked a question about access to lawyers, especially the individuals who have been arrested. I think we have been very vocal as the Law Society on representation of individuals who have been arrested by the members, by police officers. And across the country, we have advocates representing accused persons, specifically individuals who have been exercising their right under Article 37 on assembly and picketing. And these advocates have been doing this work pro bono on behalf of the Law Society across the country. And so if you are arrested and you think you are produced in court, trust me, there will be representation from the Law Society on the question if you are arrested while demonstrating peacefully. If you committed other offenses like destruction of property, other offenses that were not specifically in line with Article 37, then the Law Society might not want to take up that matter, because any other crime beyond that, you have a right to look for your own advocate to be able to represent you. But if you are arrested in line, and of course we know there are trumped up charges, certain police officers purport to draw trumped up charges, and I want to thank the DPP somehow to an extent for refusing to charge or allow a charge that essentially is trumped up. And of course, we are keen to look at those charge sheets before we even pick up representation. And it's very important that you know free. Now you are even paying insurance. Those are the people we offer representation to across the country. That pro bono service is available to the members of the public through the Law Society of Kenya. And I think the last question you asked was the public participation. I don't know whether, Madam President, you can pick that up. The question on public participation to be being devolved across the country. If you can hear me.
I will on public participation. That is something that we've talked about. Something that we have. This.
Sorry, we lost you, Madam President.
On public participation, the issue that arises is, yes, having to deliver your documentation, but also government ideally should be able to facilitate public participation. And that is why we're looking at this will be part of the recommendations we'll be speaking with regards to how can we ensure we facilitate public participation, that people's views from all over the country can be obtained, and even if it's a platform, we're thinking around a platform that everyone can be able to share views and that it's received. And it's a open and transparent platform that not necessarily to be controlled by government, but open to all members of the public, that you're able to share your views, and even different avenues that we can ensure that whatever memorandum you present, that they're able to reach the destination that ought to. And so that is something that we can think around, because when it comes to bill, government organizes public participation, but we've also seen the concerns over a period of time that where the public participation barazas are hosted are far away from people, so to effectively ensure that certain people are not able to participate. So that is something we'll be thinking around and seeing how to ensure we are able to enable public participation. Someone asked about vetting, and I say vetting must be done for the nominees, because such an analogy that they don't go for vetting afresh would mean that as long as you are ever a public, you are CS or a PS, then even when a new president comes, then you don't need to go to vetting. That's a very narrow-minded perception. Even these CSs ought to be vetted, and people share concerns even within the tenure that they have held those particular offices, as to why they should be granted that other opportunity to continue to serve the people of Kenya. And so vetting must be done, and that's why you have that option to share your memorandum, share your views with your member of parliament or the National Assembly, such that these nominees, Parliament can be able to vet them, take into consideration any views, accusations, or complaints that may have even arisen within their tenure for the old ones that have held office. And of course, the new ones must be vetted.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. Can we have Kefa?
Hello?
Kefa, we can hear you. Proceed kindly.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, this is James, not Kefa. But
okay, James,
just speak. I want to just raise two issues. First of all, thank you for this forum. I think we're also learning so much. But I have just something different a bit. We are having sometimes two or three parallel spaces speaking about the same thing, X spaces speaking about the same thing. So maybe I think to amplify our voices, I think if possible that we're able to have a combined space because we're talking about the same thing. Maybe just my proposal. The other issue is something of a very street thinking mentality. I know, yes, we are talking about continuing with peaceful protest, but still the forces, the police make it appear like it's chaotic and all that. But I have observed one thing, that whenever we are in the streets, you find that when we have, like for example, our ladies at the forefront, it's like the police have a soft spot for them. You find that rarely are they aggressive when we have ladies on the front line. But whenever it's our young men, it becomes a bit more chaotic. So I was just thinking aloud and maybe thinking that also if you can be able to have a very forceful presence of our ladies at the forefront, maybe we can showcase that we are peaceful. And I'm sure the police is like they have a soft spot. I have noted that. Maybe just as Ruto is thinking, so that at least we are able to have people like we feel that maybe the police are feeling like mercy for them. They're not clobbering them. We have not really seen so many young ladies being clobbered, and I think that some of the messages they are portraying outside there, it makes even the protest appear like it's for all of us, the youth. So just my opinion, maybe we can have some more ladies at the forefront. Thank you.
Thank you. We can have Aaron.
Thank you, Mansa. I have two questions. Number one, I think majority of Kenyans support the Gen Z and the issues they have raised. And my concern is that even as we protest and so forth, we need to be sure that we need to follow the legal way as much as possible, so that we have only one country. We don't want to ban it. So my question to Madam President and others who are on the channel on this particular space, what kind of legal steps, practical legal steps can be taken to give effect to the issues that Gen Zs have raised and which majority of Kenyans agree with, step by step, all the way. What is there, what has been exhausted, what is to be done, and so forth. The second issue is that some time back, I think it's Justice Maraga ruled or commented, I can't remember what it was, that because the two-thirds gender rule hadn't been implemented by Parliament, that in effect Parliament stood dissolved. What is the position on that? Because that would be a very easy way of, instead of going through the lengthy process of recalling these fellows, have it dissolved, and then the Gen Zs who are majority can help remodel this Parliament by getting people who are likely to help us. I was happy to hear that I think it was PLO who advanced the position that those fellows who have been reappointed in this particular cabinet, really it is illegal. And I think majority of Kenyans would agree with that. But what the laws provides is quite another, and we are going to watch the space. And the Law Society should take the lead, and they have done very, very well. And congratulations to the Law Society led by Faith. What you are doing for this country is absolutely amazing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron. We can have Hosea. Hosea, kindly. Richard.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to talk about the representation of the people. You find that we elect the parliamentarians to go and present our views, but again, we've always seen that they don't represent our views, but they represent the views of maybe the parties that have sponsored them or the leaders who are behind them. And so I feel that you find again these parties also benefit from our resources, because at the end of the year, there's some allocation that these parties are given. If you look at the Political Parties Act, I think Part 3, Sections 23, 24, and 25 talks about the funding to these parties. And I think they're given 0.3% of the national revenue. And this comes about because someone talks about when they get to the parliament, then there's that jostle. Some independent candidates now cross over to certain parties. And this should not happen. So I feel that this clause should be maybe abolished, so that the revenue that these people are getting from this should help us do something else. Because again, you find that there are parties that are sponsoring people to parliament, yes, but again, they don't represent the views of the people, but they represent the views of either the party leadership or the leaders behind it. So I think there's poor representation of that, and that money should be used to do something else. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Umbati.
Thank you very much. I would like to ask a question, and that pertains to the legality of changing our tactics. I was thinking maybe if we can force every person who is working, we tell them not to work, to go to work, let's say on Tuesday and Thursday, and whoever who disobeys that corrective agreement of the people of Kenya will be dealt with. What is the legal position of that? The second thing about corruption, in our laws, do we have punishment for corruption? Secondly, what is the threshold for someone to be convicted? Because you can't tell me that money gets lost, and we have people who signed, and we are told like we cannot trace that money. How? Can we lower the threshold of corruption so that way we can easily deal with these people? Because it becomes not easy when we know the procurement departments and the people signing the money are there, but we say the money is lost. Those are my two questions.
Thank you, Lumadede. Then we can have responses. Lumadede.
Yes, thank you so much. I had three issues. One is the issue of education that has already been handled. Maybe to just emphasize, if there is a way that we can force the issues of bursary to be in an education fund, if there's an official way of doing that, so that it is not at the any of the different members of parliament and elected officials, it can be good. Then secondly, I was just thinking, these issues of accountability, is it, could it be now a good time to maybe have an accountability act whereby we are specific that a government employee has to be accountable in this way, and if they are not accountable in those different ways that are spelled out in the act, then there is a specific punishment for it. Maybe having an accountability act will solve some of these issues of impunity that we see here and there, where you see even a CS goes to the TV and he says he doesn't know the people who are shooting. That means that person in a country that works, that person will not be there as the CS the next day. But in our country, impunity is the normal thing. Then the third one, on the issues of police brutality. I was thinking, maybe we are trying to solve the symptoms, but then we are not really trying to solve the real issues. What if we also have a formal way where we petition? I don't know if petition is the right word, where we look at police right from the recruitment, that instead of looking at instead of the requirements being a police officer should have a D+ or something, we also look at the emotional intelligence of a police officer. That, some of these things, it's a police officer who didn't have the emotional intelligence of dealing with a particular issue. And because of a number of things, and this also leads to their training. Why can't we also look at their curricula? Because I don't think even the police college has an aspect of emotional intelligence. The other day, Charles Owino was speaking in the media, and then what he said was that when a police officer is in a particular situation, and the situation that he was describing isn't a situation that demands that a police officer should use live bullets or something. So I was wondering, that shows you that right from their training, these people are not trained on how to really handle these people, really handle citizens, because they are still using the colonial script of handling issues. And I think that if we can have also some effort directed towards overhauling that aspect of the police, it can also be good. That, and also the issues on corruption, I think those are the issues that I had. Thank you.
Thank you. If we can allow Abner to respond to some of those questions. Abner, do you have the microphone?
Yes, thank you, Manuel. I think I'll just pick the last one in terms of the police and how they've been handling the demonstrators, or those who are picketing. I choose to call them that. I think we've experienced a lot of police brutality, and for me, it goes more towards in terms of leadership, or in terms of how they are led and the kind of instructions they're given. Remember, the Law Society has gone to the extent of petitioning the High Court in terms of buying the police from using excessive force and equipment such as the water cannon and the tear gases to tarnish and break away peaceful demonstrators. And we have gotten orders to such extent. But unfortunately, the police have continued to orchestrate a lot of brutality and force against peaceful citizens who are advocating for their rights. So, first of all, it is a matter of leadership. We expected that at the point of which the former Inspector General resigned, we had hoped that we would see a difference in terms of how the police are conducting themselves. But unfortunately, we witnessed a lot of police brutality. This week on Wednesday, we were in court where we represented 109 peaceful Kenyans who were demonstrating. And unfortunately, we witnessed so many of them who were injured, who could not even walk. They had bruises. And these are some of the actions that we will be calling upon the Inspector General and the police service to take responsibility in terms of how they have handled the Kenyans. But I agree with you, but perhaps it goes down to things like training. I mean, emotional intelligence is something that perhaps goes to how somebody has been trained. So perhaps as a nation, this is a conversation we should have in terms of what kind of training are our officers given, and perhaps what kind of people do we want to have in the service serving Kenyans as police officers. I'd pick another question on, I think one of us asked if we can have a directive where if somebody does not chooses to go to work and does not demonstrate, perhaps if we could have them reprimanded or punished and so forth. I think the Constitution of Kenya makes Kenya a democratic country, and you will agree with me, not every single Kenyan is for this type of protest. There are those Kenyans who are opposed to these recent demonstrations. We recently saw a research by TIFA that was commissioned by TIFA that showed the kind of responses that Kenya have towards the recent demonstrations that we've had. So you will agree with me that not every Kenyan is in support of this demonstration. So Kenya as a democracy, you cannot force each and every one of us to be part of this demonstrator. So I would agree with one of the speakers who said that perhaps if we could have a unity of thought, perhaps if we could not have so many perhaps platforms where we are communicating the same thing, so that it makes it easier for those who are in support of these demonstrations to have maybe one agenda, move in one direction, rather than having splinter groups. But we, as a democracy, cannot force each and every single Kenyan to be part of perhaps something that in their own right they do not subscribe to. I'll pick those two questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Lord Masaba, your question, kindly, if you can shoot. Richard? Mwageka. Ryan? Ryan, whichever. Ryan, can someone hear me?
We can hear you.
Robert, kindly, if you've requested the microphone, kindly, and you can't speak, drop it so that we can add more speakers to the speaker box. Robert? Robert, can you hear me? Masaba, you still have the microphone, kindly.
Perhaps, Manwa, as we wait for some of our speakers to get ready, I've just seen somebody send me a message. They had inquired on the 2/3 gender rule in terms of compliance of the constitutional threshold, that the cabinet should not have 2/3 of the same gender as members of the said cabinet. From what we saw yesterday from the first 11, clearly, unless we are jumping the gun, there could be possibility that that particular rule will not be complied with. Previously, we've seen the previous cabinets that we've had since the inauguration of promulgation, of the new constitution 2010, that no previous cabinet has met the constitutional threshold of the 2/3 gender rule. So perhaps we could be a bit patient and see how the next half of the cabinet will be constituted, and perhaps that could form part of the grounds in which members of the public could petition or submit their memorandum as to the unsuitability of the cabinet. The 2/3 gender rule is a constitutional threshold, and I think the government, the president, being the head of the executive, has direct control, power, and authority to make sure that that particular provision of law is complied with. Unlike the legislature, which the people directly elect, and perhaps no one has really control as to the constitution or the compliance with the 2/3 gender rule. In terms, when it comes to the executive, I believe that the president has the power to make sure that that particular provision of law is complied with. So perhaps if we could wait and see the second half or the second 11 of this particular cabinet, then we would be able to also submit our memorandum as to the unsuitability of the cabinet in terms of compliance with the 2/3 gender rule. Thank you.
Manuel, just to add on to that.
Yes, proceed kindly, PLO.
Thank you. Just to add on to the 2/3 gender rule, Well, Parliament cannot just be dissolved on not just for eroding the sanctity of Parliament, but it can be devolved for failure to even enact any particular legislation within the specified time period. And any person, including you, patriots, who are on this particular call, can petition the High Court on this particular matter. And then the High Court now, in determining this petition, should be under sub-article 5 of Article 261, which basically talks about the consequential legislation. So once you do this, then the High Court, in determining that petition, can make a declaratory order on that matter, and then I'll transmit that order directing Parliament and the AG to take steps to ensure that the required legislation, which is enacted within that period specified, should be reported, to the Chief Justice in terms of progress that was made. And that is why on the 21st of September 2020, when the Chief Justice Emeritus, issued an advisory to the President pursuant to Article 261, sub-article 7, to dissolve Parliament for failure to enact legislation on the 2000 rule. That particular advisory opinion, had 27 paragraphs. And I'll justify the 26th paragraph of that particular opinion, and I will quote David Maraga verbatim. He says that in the circumstances, let us endure pain if we must, if only to remind ourselves as a country that choices, and particularly choices on constitutional obligations, have consequences. Let us endure pain if only to remind the electorate to hold their parliamentary representatives accountable. Let us endure pain if only to remind ourselves that as a country, being a democracy that has chosen to be governed by the rule of law, we must say no to impunity and hold everyone accountable for their actions or omissions. That was David Maraga in that advisory opinion. And that is what I advise all of us and beseech all of us, implore to all of us to maintain that particular mindset. Back to you, Manuel.
Thank you, Council, for that. Let me invite several other speakers to ask their questions and make contributions. Bad Girl. Then we can have Nick. Bad Girl, are you there?